In 1904, St. Louis, Missouri was host to one of the greatest fairs in the world. Called the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, it celebrated the centennial of the purchase of Louisiana in 1803. The fair, also called the St. Louis World's Fair, was held on a 12-acre tract of land that is now Forest Park. The exposition opened April 30th, 1904, and ran until December the 1st, 1904. It was the first World's Fair to turn a profit. It featured the participation of 62 nations, 43 US states, and the federal government. The fair comprised more than 1,500 individual buildings interconnected by 75 miles of roads and walkways. The infrastructure and buildings required 3 years to construct. A special exposition company was created for coordinating this process, and nearly the entire population of St. Louis was involved in the work. The scale of the plan was so immense that the fair, originally scheduled for 1903, had to be delayed by 1 year. The Louisiana Purchase Exposition was designed to celebrate major human advancements since the Louisiana Purchase 100 years before. Hello and welcome. My name's Campbell. This is Autodidactic. Hope you're having a fantastic day. And today we're going to look at, of course, the St. Louis Exposition from 1904 that was apparently built in 3 years on a 1,200-acre site, hundreds of buildings. And these World's Fairs also look like they were the place where they were introducing the new culture, right? The culture that's been around for the last 150 years that we find ourselves in, this consumerism culture. You know, all these companies were introduced, a lot of new technologies like lighting, electricity, automobiles, the Olympic Games are tied to the World's Fairs, different, types of foods and food companies, like just so much stuff. So we're going to have a look at that as well and what they were displaying in 1904 in St. Louis. But before we do, please give me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell for notifications, and leave me a comment. It all helps with the algorithm. And coming up is just a short ad for your perusal. We all want to live a healthier, more natural life. And after the last few years, many of us are a little wary of doctors and their wares. So, in my opinion, it's a good idea to learn how to grow your own. That's right, grow your own medicinal plants. But how do you do that? Well, you do it with the complete natural pharmacy for your backyard. Now, this garden medicinal kit actually comes with the seeds you'll need. It comes with the seeds of 10 easy to grow plants that you can grow in your garden. And then it also shows you how to turn these plants into salves, tinctures, teas, etc., that you can use to heal yourself and your family naturally. There's yarrow, the backyard wound healer. Marshmallow, which is great for any digestive issues you might be having. Evening primrose, a natural remedy for skin and nerves. And echinacea, which is the most powerful immunity plant, and everyone should be growing it, and much more. So click the link below in the description and find out some more information of how you can start to grow your own medicinal herbs and start to take charge of your own and your family's health. Click the link below and start to heal yourself naturally. The electric light, then a recent innovation, was used extensively for illuminating the Louisiana Purchase Exposition. The fair was designed to reflect an ideal utopian society of the future. Each zone was meticulously planned with a specific purpose, and the displays were divided into 12 categories. Each category was housed in a structure called the palace. Those imposing structures supported massive columns and spire towers and wore an ornamental look that rivaled the embellishments of an actual palace. The largest of all of the facilities was the Palace of Agriculture, which occupied about 20 acres. The fairground featured architectural masterpieces, broad boulevards, curved bridges, and landscaped waterways and vistas. The fair provided an opportunity for visitors to learn about the wonders and cultures from around the world. Each of the exhibits was designed to be entertaining as well as educational. The exhibits not only displayed the items, but also the processes that were involved in their making. The first Olympics to be held in the United States were held at the St. Louis Fair, but the fair's scale overshadowed the games. Moreover, few international players participated in the games owing to the high travel costs. So how did everyone get to the World Fair, I wonder? The Vulcan statue of Birmingham, Alabama, currently the largest cast iron statue in the world, and the city symbol, was first exhibited at the Exposition in the Palace of Mines and Metallurgy. And apart from the state and country exhibitions, the fair featured exhibits by industries, private organizations, theatre troupes, and music schools. One of the popular zones was the Pike, which featured carnival-style amusements and rides, and nearly all the structures built during the fair were intended to be temporary, including the Agricultural Hall. Nearly all the structures built during the fair were intended to be temporary, or so they want us to believe, including the 20-acre Palace of Agriculture. But as we know, many of these World's Fairs buildings still stand around the world. There are 3 in Australia alone still standing. But they say the buildings were intended to be temporary, and so were constructed mainly of staff, a mixture of plaster of Paris and hemp fibers. Following the fair, many of the structures were razed to the ground. Some of the buildings were spared, and they exist today. A notable structure among them is the Palace of Fine Arts. The exquisite structure features an interior reminiscent of the Grand Roman Baths of Caracalla. The building currently houses the St. Louis Art Museum. Other surviving structures include the Brookings Hall of Washington University, a huge bird cage at the St. Louis Zoo, and mansions located on the northern border of Forest Park. The Louisiana Purchase Exposition still retains its aura and fascination among today's collectors and historians. The debris of the demolished buildings and structures of the fair are studied by archaeologists. Many of the items originally sold during the fair are now traded as antiques. These collectibles serve as a reminder of the World's Fair, whose grandeur remains unmatched and unrivaled. So that comes from ushistory.com, and it tells us the little story, the mainstream narrative. Now, just reading that, what stands out to me is they say this was all built out of staff, except the Palace of Fine Arts and other buildings that are, that are being used, a massive birdcage, some houses. And if they were constructed out of masonry, as we know they were, then it would have taken more than 2 or 3 years to build all these buildings. And even if they were made of plaster and staff and that, they want us to believe that they built more than 1,500 individual buildings, the largest covering 20 acres. They built 75 miles of roads and walkways. They also built all the canals, of course, all the plumbing, which they never mentioned, that ran all the fountains. All the fountains. Now, fountains can't be made out of plaster. Anything that's got water on it has to be solid rock, right? Or brick, masonry of some kind. But they don't touch on these topics. They just say, no, it was all staff, all staff, plaster. We knocked most of it down, and we just kept a couple, which just happened to, not be made of plaster and happened to be made exactly like all the other old world buildings we still have that we're told are built in, the 1500s, the 1600s, the 1700s. Yet these ones looked exactly the same, but were made from plaster. But now, 100 years later, the ones that are still standing are exactly the same as the ones from the 1500s. So lots of holes in this story from my point of view. And here's just another article. I'll link these two below so you can check them out. Riverfront Times, rare photos from the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. You can see they were introducing things like airships, but of course, making them look very rudimentary. And, much like the plane, which was invented, what was it, 1902, I believe, I could be wrong. By World War One, we had, fighting planes, aeroplanes and pilots to pilot them, 10 years later. Same with balloons. This is 1904. By, the 1910s, there were proper balloons everywhere. And then by 1930s, the Hindenburg, that was gone, right? So 30 years for the air balloon. This became part of the Washington University. This is clearly built of brick, okay? But and just this building alone, like I said, that'd take more than 3 years to build. But they want us to believe they built all these other 1,500 buildings, but this one they decided to build out of brick and build it properly and make it look like a castle. Just, why not? And we have here, this is the Alps. So they were recreating culture, and what they do is they give the buildings a certain look. As you can see here in the Alps, they love to do the wooden, protruding windows and the sort of ornate wooden balconies, these sloped roofs with these this facading on the edge of it. It's a certain look, right? So they cover all the buildings in that and say that's the Alps. That's that culture. And here we have the Department of Anthropology. This is one of the buildings we're told is made out of plaster, right? 3 stories, plaster building. And, you can see this bit goes down. It's lower than the rest, looking a lot like they've just come in and graded and flattened out this land in front of it. And the building was already there. Here's China. Japan, Japanese restaurant. So again, see how they introduce the culture, the way that the buildings look, and the rickshaws and things. This is Japan. Here again, we have Japanese gardens. Okay, so again, introducing all these things, and these little pagoda type things, and people still have them in their gardens, right? And we've got the, Japanese looking buildings, the clothes, so again, it looks like they were introducing culture. This is the British Pavilion, a reproduction of Orangery, which I'm not sure what that is. Obviously some kind of building, which probably means, just the same building. We got the gardens out here. So this is British culture. So all these people, who are probably orphans or descendants of orphans and don't know what's going on, they're being told this is the British. When things look like this, it's British. When they look like this, it's Japanese, it's Chinese. This is a good one. Construction work on a channel. Construction work on a channelway for the rivers, the Perrys in Forest Park Dome. So basically they're saying this is a channelway for the rivers. This is a canal, is what they're saying. And they've built the edge here out of wood, which is not waterproof. So I don't even know what this picture is meant to really be representing. This big deck here, we don't see many wooden decks in the World's Fairs, right? They all look to be masonry, tiled, cement, something, not wood. And again, what are we supposed to believe that they then fill these up with water and this is going to hold it? So not sure, but that's what it says. Construction work on a channelway for the river. This is another construction photo. And as you can see, we've got a road here. You can see the kind of workers we've got. They say that all of St. Louis was involved in building this. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think that's a worker. 5, 6, 7. We've got 7 workers on this road, which is already there. And they're just, I don't know, smoothing it out or something. And this is the thing, right? We've got all these stories, but this picture could be anywhere. We don't know this is the fairgrounds. Here we have the Automobile Parade, 1904 World's Fair. Okay, this is called the Argentinian exhibit, demonstrating a classroom. So introducing the education system, classrooms, And this says teaching skills associated with manual labor, particularly carpentry. Now, the story we're given of history is all of these skills were passed down father to son. Maybe, in certain circumstances, there were apprentices that weren't necessarily the sons, but teaching this in schooling, that's a new thing, right? Being introduced. Send your kids away to be educated. Again, Brazil, this is Brazil log cabin. And I've looked at lots of pictures and old books and maps, and I've never seen structures like this, apart from a few that were built from the Spanish. So again, that introducing this, we didn't have any technology kind of theme, right? This is Bulgarian art. So again, introducing, patterns and different, cultural themes and artworks, art designs that people are supposed to associate with certain regions. This is all to do with division, right? This is how they were dividing us at the start. This person's Bulgarian, this person's from the US, this is Japanese, this is Chinese, right? The Chinese government pavilion. This is the Church of the Philippines. So again, introducing culture, the different, clothes and the way they build their buildings, and also religion. And they also introduced a lot of industry. And this was basically to get people to choose, what do you want to do for your job, right? This is your choices. And, a lot of this machinery does look, very advanced for 1904, for what we're told of the timeline. And they got cutaways in these engines and stuff. And a lot of it also looks very large, but all solid iron, this old world solid iron that doesn't seem to rust. But then, you look for the foundries and the manufacturing plants, and they don't seem to be either there or enough of them to have built all this stuff. Hang gliders, flight. All right, so they had the balloons, the air balloons, and they got gliders as well. 1904. That's William Avery. Here we have the Chinese pavilion. And again, this is a reproduction, apparently, of Prince Pu Lin's summer residence. And, we see this so often looking at the old world structures, that we have these very, very similar or identical structures in different parts of the world, in countries and cultures that are supposed to have nothing to do with each other. So is this another way that they were sort of hiding all this stuff and creating cultures? Because to me, these are, all these buildings are machines of some kind. And so this could be, whatever, the cleaning machine, let's just say. And all they do is they say, oh, no, it looks like that because it's Chinese, right? And they give it a culture, and then we just think it's a building. And, of course, the division. Cliff dwellers. I mean, look at this, literally. They've built this. Now, this up here looks like laid rock inlaid, so this is a solid structure, and the rest just looks like, I'm not sure if it almost looks like sheeting, doesn't it? That's been sprayed with paint or something, but you can see the steps there. Could also be, mortar or geopolymer of some kind. But yeah, these are the troglodytes, right? The cliff dwellers. And of course, Theodore Roosevelt was also at the 1904 St. Louis Fair. This building as well, just to point out, looks, we see reproductions of this building everywhere. Go check out the Canadian Parliamentary Library. Looks very, very similar. And there's a lot of other ones. But Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, that's where we get the name Teddy Bear. That's what it's named after. Theodore. So as well as him being there, the teddy bear was introduced. And this is just all one fair, like all these culture things. We got, cars, we got the Olympics, we got teddy bears, we got foods and things. So what do you think? Leave me a comment below. I've got a lot more pictures that I'm going to put on now for you to have a look at. But leave me a comment. What do you think? Is the narrative that we're told real, or do these look like found cities and then they were used to bring in, the new control system, right? And with these guys in control in their black suits and their top hats. because that's what it looks like to me. And I'm still looking for an explanation for the plumbing system that ran all of the fountains. Still haven't found that one. So hang around, check out all these photos. There's about 100 of them coming up, really good ones. Many of them you won't have seen before, so hang out to the end. Please give me a like, a share, and a subscribe, and I'll talk to you all on the next upload.
Complication.